Yeah, we had a nice little session set up for you guys today. Petri came down to the studio yesterday and he showed me some of his beautiful pieces, and we talked and we filmed some background footage on his wire stain, his steel wool stain, which he makes his own. It's not silver stain. I was originally calling it silver stain because there's no silver in it. In actual fact, it isn't a stain, it's actually a Jean Cuisine or Jean Cuisine paint. And if you're not familiar with the paint, it is a paint made by Debutis, the French makers. And they make this paint, which is a very lovely, thin, sanguine paint, which is semi-translucent, and it's like a flesh tone. It's like a flesh tint, and you actually paint it on the internal face of the glass rather than the external face, which you would normally do with silver stain. Kate says we're putting the message in the other chat telling people to move over. Jim, hi Jim, yeah, you can see me. Hello. Mel says hi, can hear and see you. Fantastic. Mel. Thunderwood, yes, see and hear you. Hello Thunderwood Underwood. Yeah, and Brian and Soul963, it works. And Vicky says, just came up to see you. Lee says, and he can hear and see me. Wonderful. Hello, guys. I can see that there's 24 of you in the chat. Thank you again for your patience. Yeah, we're basically trying to kind of do something that we've not done before, which is do a live stream and bring a guest in. It may be that we have to try and do it the other way, which is the vertical way, for next week. I've talked to Petri. We've been in correspondence throughout the day today setting this up. So it's such a shame, but that's just the way it happens. You know, with new technology, I'm still learning it. Maybe I pushed the wrong button somewhere along the line. But we'd set it up and scheduled it all, and I could see that there was about 30 people waiting on the live stream. I couldn't get back into that live stream, and every time I tried to go live, I was going live on a separate live stream. And of course, some people were seeing it, but then other people weren't seeing it. So Kate, who's working as the moderator tonight, has very kindly put that message into the original chat to say that that live stream is defunct and to come out of it and to come on to this live stream. So hopefully we've got now 31 people on this live stream. It is fantastic to see you guys. Thank you for your patience. We will sort out these dilemmas. We will sort out these technical issues as we move forward. It's new technology for me. I've never really, this is only the 8th live stream that I've done, and we had set it up on a different system called OBS. Technically speaking, that is just a platform for hosting the live stream, which allowed me to do demonstrations and have 2 cameras going. But I was just me, and I've been looking in all week to try and find out how to bring Petri into that OBS platform. And it was a little bit more convoluted and complex than we wanted. So we've gone over to a different platform, which is called Riverside FM, which in principle should work, but in practice doesn't. So I don't know why that is. But we've got some beautiful kind of images that we were going to show you. Let me just see if I can show you some sample panels that Petri... So these were the sample panels that we were going to talk about. If you're familiar with Petri's work, he makes these most incredible pieces of glass, painted and stained and enameled and leaded together. Really detailed. These are all sort of autonomous panels. He had an exhibition at Ely Stained Glass Museum a few months ago, and he was showing his work. He's taking his work over to the States. He's doing glass painting tutorials in the States and here in the UK with Icon. And I am determined to get him on the live stream next week, come hell or high water. We'll banish all these gremlins and we'll find a way to make it work. Because I want Petri to talk about this wonderful new stain that he has created. He's really developed it himself, and I'll let him speak about it himself. But he, just through trial and error and through curiosity, he's decided to kind of experiment with a type of stain that's usually used on wood. It is an iron acetate, and he's concocted this and made it work, and it's incredible. And you can see some of the coloration on the fox here and on the roe deer is a sort of a fleshy, peachy color, and that is the stain, the iron acetate stain. So it doesn't come out as a yellow; it comes out as this peachy sort of brown color, and it's very much like a flesh tint. And it is delicious. Particularly here, we've got some images and some. When Petri came to the studio yesterday, he was talking about this particular panel. I think it's called lynx family, I think it is. So there's a baby lynx and there's a mother lynx there. Well, there's two baby lynx there. And the ferns, the sort of brown ferns, are a combination of his own recipe paint, which is creating this lovely peachy color, plus some stains and some acid etched work. So it's really delightful, and I want him to tell you all about it in person himself. So we will save most of these images for next week. I'll just show you one very quick image as well as of a complete head. Let me see if I can find that, get that on live for you. Which is live. Let's go live. Yeah, this beautiful head Petri is going to talk about next week, which is a reproduction of a period head that he was asked to create by a Belgian conservator, and he really went to town sort of creating these beautiful tints and beautiful shading colors. So next week, come hell or high water, we're going to get Petri on to talk about this discovery, and also he's really up for tuition as well. He's very, he's doing his own tuition, and I want to kind of pass students towards him as well, because he is a fantastic glass artist, and he is doing the same thing that a few of us are doing, and that is trying to pass on the skills to the next generation of glass artists. So yeah, I'm determined to make that happen. Kim says, finally found you, LOL. Beautiful trees, says Beverly. Charlotte says, Derek, Jim Hallis has an interesting question on the other chat about how to determine lead lines from a movie poster. Charlotte, thank you so much for sending that over to me. So let's go back. That's a really great question. Jim, let me try and answer it for you just using one of the pieces that we showed of Petri's panels. Basically, the sample panels here, let's just go live on this. Live. Let's get this up. Come on, live. There. Live. There we are. Right. So let's take this one as an example. I mean, this is Petri's design, and you can see here that he has secreted the lead lines in a variety of places. I don't have a pointer to show you here, but you can see around the perimeter of the unicorn that there's a lead line secreted in there. You probably can't see, because this is just a photograph taken from his Instagram page, that there are various lead lines that follow the lines of the trees, the tree trunks, and the branches of the tree. So Petri, in this instance, is using the traditional technique of using a perimeter lead around the outside perimeter of each particular object in a design, whether it's a crown or whether it's a face. You can see perhaps in this image here, you can see the center section. There is a tree at a slight angle, and there's a lead line that runs all the way up the edge of that tree. I don't know if you can see that in chat, but that is a classic way of hiding the lead lines in a way that doesn't interfere too much with the design. There are lots of different ways in which you can create stained glass designs using lead lines in different ways. The classic way to do it, which is basically the Gothic way, which has been continued for centuries, which is using lead lines to simply hold an image together, running round the perimeter of that image. And so generally speaking, the cut pieces of glass are relatively small, and you would just use the lead lines around the perimeter. But then artists in the 20th century like John Piper and Patrick Rentians reinvented the whole way that you use lead lines, and I've got videos on the YouTube channel which you may want to look at a different time, talking about that revolutionary approach to lead line design, really pioneered by Patrick Rentian interpreting the designs of John Piper. Now, John Piper wasn't a glass artist, he was a watercolorist and a painter, so he would create these beautiful designs, and Patrick Rentians would adapt them into stained glass window designs, and he was very creative in his use of lead lines. So that's going hopefully some way to answering that question. It's a very complicated and broad topic. This is another interesting one here. Jim Hallis, you can see the lead lines are interrupting each of the elements within that design, so that if you just casually look at it, you might not be aware that the lead lines are there. And that is the classic way to solve the design problem, whether it's a geometric pattern for a front door panel, or whether it's a portrait, or whether it's a complicated panel. The classic way of solving that problem is to wrap the lead around the edges of a particular element and not interrupt it. But there are lots of ways of doing it, and I actually cut and lead windows up and use lead lines in a much more disruptive way, where I disrupt the design and I actually use the lead lines to guide the eye and to guide the eye into different ways of moving around an image. So I will use flowing lead lines that lead you from one element to another. It's a broad topic, the way to design images for stained glass windows using lead lines. It's a really broad topic. So, you know, I will actually do a live stream for you on that. That will be one of the topics that we will work with. And Jim says here, I'm trying to use the Excalibur movie poster image. My original dissection wasn't right and maybe too literal. Some glass was too thin also. Yeah, I mean, this is a big topic, and it's a great topic, and I'm really glad that you brought it up, Jim, because how you divide your design up and how you use your lead lines is going to be key to how the whole design looks. Structurally as well, it's really important how you design with your lead lines, because you don't want, it very much depends on where the glass is being installed. For example, if it's being installed in a front door panel, it's liable to be like a lot of backwards and forwards of the door opening and closing is going to fatigue the glass and put a lot of stress on the glass. And so how you construct the lead is going to be really important to how that window is held together. You don't want the window to bow or buckle. Again, if the pieces are very large pieces of glass, again, you run the risk of the glass breaking. So it's a big topic, Jim, and it's one that does deserve maybe a live stream on its own, and I'll maybe set that up so that we can talk about that in a future live stream. The next live stream will be with Petri come hell or high water. But yeah, do you have any more questions, guys, in chat? I can see that there are 33 of you on the live stream. Please ask questions. I did want to touch on another topic today, which is there's a obviously in this last week, a bit very sad news as part of the stained glass community that some of you may know about, others may not, which is the death of Sir Brian Clark. Now, Brian Clark, if you don't know, is a legendary, or was a legendary, contemporary glass artist, a stained glass artist, who died on the 1st of July at the age of 72. I think he was just due to be 72 the day on the 2nd of July. He put on a really big exhibition called A Great Light in London in 2023, which has been covered widely, not only on my YouTube channel, but on social media as well. And I'm putting a video together really to give you a bit of an introduction to many people who don't know about Brian Clark. What I find interesting, Margot, are you online? Margot, it's great to see you if you are online. We were talking a little bit about you earlier on with Petri, and I really apologize, Margot, that we haven't been able to get Petri on in person. Margot says, I'm looking forward to seeing how Petri recreated the piece of the old lady originally by Abraham van Diepenberg. I've been asking different artists around Europe and the USA to try it. Well, we do have a piece that Petri has created for you, Margot, using his iron acetate stain, and I've had it in my hand yesterday. It is fabulous, and we will bring that to the live stream next week. Margot, for you in chat, has been at my studio. She had a traveling scholarship with the Worshipful Company of Glaziers. 3 artists got those traveling scholarships and came to my studio for a week. I want to say a couple of years ago now, Margot, maybe correct me if I'm wrong. And we did a week's worth of work of painting and designing, and it was just fantastic to work with you. Margot is now stateside doing a PhD in stained glass conservation, and so it is wonderful that the stained glass community is an international community, and we talk and we share ideas and we share processes and techniques. That's the way to do it. It's nothing, let's not do any gatekeeping. Let's try and share ideas and best practice so that we keep these techniques alive and we help other creatives to use these techniques as well. Live stream about lead lines, yes please, says Susan AFP. Absolutely great idea, Charlotte. Regarding lead lines, it's fun to use tracing paper and try different options, says Charlotte. Absolutely. Now also we were talking about Petri, and Petri can talk about this next week on the live stream. The way Petri designs his stained glass windows is different to me. Petri will use Procreate on his iPad, and he will import images into Procreate on different layers and move them around. If you're familiar with Photoshop, there's layering techniques which I use in Photoshop, and you can vary the transparency of the layers, and it behaves very much like glass, and it's a beautiful way to design. And then he adds a second layer or a third layer or a fourth layer of images, and then a top layer with lead lines on top, and it allows you to create a variety of different options without having to draw them out. I'm still pretty old school when it comes to drawing designs out. I tend to draw them out on paper in pencil first of all, and I do a whole range of different variable lead line options. I start with having a blank piece of paper with the outline of the stained glass panel that I want to create. If it's a church panel, say it's 3 lancets, I will have the outline of the 3 lancets created, and I will print multiple pages off on A4 just with the outline of the design, and then I'll get to work with a sketch with the pencil, and I will just start sketching images and sketching design ideas in, and they're the lead lines. That's what I start with first of all. So that's the way that I work. Petri works in a slightly different way. He will work with Procreate. Other artists will use, we were talking earlier on about John Piper and Patrick Renchins. John Piper has, I've seen some of his sketches for his creations that were interpreted by Patrick Renchins. He will create his designs out on a large piece of paper with watercolors and inks and chalks and cut out pieces of paper cut into shapes and stuck down like sort of Matisse. And he would also use wax and draw with candles and then paint over the wax lines to create different effects. There are so many different ways to develop a design and to add lead lines to it, and that's really part of the skill and part of the enjoyment of creating stained glass. It's unlike creating a painting where you can create a canvas and an image that doesn't have to be self-supporting. You know, when you stand a canvas up, it doesn't buckle under its own weight. It doesn't bend when wind hits it. A stained glass window does. A stained glass window will buckle under its own weight, and it will bend in different environments if it's in a door or if it's in an area where there's a lot of wind pressure on it. So you have to bear those structural elements in mind, as well as the creative aspect. Not to get confused, not to let it overwhelm you, but that's one of the exciting things about stained glass, is learning how to design stained glass. And you'll develop your own way of doing it. Your Excalibur sword, you may want to send me copies of that images after this live stream. I'll gladly have a look at them if you want to email them over to me, and I can get a better idea of your design, and maybe we can use that as part of the live stream talking about lead line solutions. And it might also use that Excalibur design of yours to create variations on a theme, you know, so we can use lead lines in lots of different ways. That might be instructive for you. It might be helpful to show you these different sort of design solutions, these different ways of creating design images. The live streams really are here as a way of you connecting to me in real time and asking questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I can see Thunderwood Underwood says, I'm late to the party. I'm 60. Though learned as a young'un, so wish I could have my time again and take a different continuous path with glass. Always loved it. 60 is young. 60 is young. You know, it's you've still got a whole lifetime ahead of you to do stained glass. Marc Chagall didn't start making stained glass until he was about 72 years of age, and then he went on to have an illustrious career with many amazing projects. 60 is, you know, you're just a pup. And it's so sad talking about age, going back to Brian Clark, dying at 72. It's really still a very young age, isn't it? I mean, he was so prolific and so active. I've been doing a lot of research on Brian Clark. I kind of knew a fair amount about him, having written a thesis on him when I was at art school, and actually going to meet him in his studio in London and filming him. That film was done on VHS tape. And of course, That was back in 1983. VHS tape doesn't last that long. So, one day I might try and dig out if I can still find the VHS tape and send it to a digital remastering to see if we can actually resurrect any of that interview. Brian Clark was 30 years of age when I filmed him in his studio, and he was just designing for the Buxton Baths project. And if you're familiar with Brian Clark, you'll know that was and might still be one of the largest stained glass features in the UK. It might not be anymore, but it certainly was at the time. And he got this huge big canvas out and was showing it to me and asking me what I thought, and I was just so impressed with the whole thing. And that cemented this notion. Actually, I knew before meeting him in person that I wanted to do stained glass. This was a way of life. This was a way of living that I wanted to embrace. I just felt it was so exciting, working with your hands, creating pieces of art for the public domain. And I'm sure you guys in chat feel the same way. Whatever scale, it doesn't matter if you're making large scale pieces or small scale pieces. The fact that you can conceive of something and you can use light and glass and lead to create something that is mesmeric, is captivating. And it's a wonderful thing to do, and it's a wonderful thing to develop. So these live streams are here to help you on your journey of discovery, to develop new things and new ideas. Charlotte says the link above didn't work, but it's for Brian Clark's Concordia in Bahrain. It's a wonderful documentary. Petri says, thanks, Margot, for the Van Diepenberg challenge. Really enjoyed the recreation of it. Yes, well, Petri, thank you again, and I'm really sorry to kind of mess you around today. We spent a lot of time together trying to make this work. We will make it work. I promise you, my friend. You can get on and tell us all about it. And, I just want you to be able to share your discoveries of paint and also show the piece that you recreated for Margot. And we can talk about it, and we've got some images to show as well. Yeah, it's a beautiful project, and it's something that I really want us to all to be able to discuss. And once we get this live stream working properly and we get it to sort of function without the gremlins, hopefully we'll be able to invite more glass artists to participate in these live streams as well. I'm trying to tee up Charlotte as well, Charlotte Saville, to do a live stream with me, because Charlotte and I have worked together on a variety of projects. There's lots of other glass artists that come to my mind that I would love to invite on the live stream, but we've got to get it working first of all. Brian says, I'm 60 and a year into glass, getting started, and have 3 large projects lined up, including a church hit by a tornado in St. Louis area. Window is done and installed Thursday. It's been amazing. Brian, that is fantastic. That is fantastic. Brian and I have been again in correspondence. Brian has recommended some good book reads for me. Last week on the stream, I was recommending Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett as a great read for creatives. You may not immediately think of Stephen Bartlett being somebody that you could identify with if you are a creative, if you are an artist. But if you are of a creative disposition, and if you are entrepreneurial, and if you want to put yourself out into the world and try and navigate the way this modern world is with social media and Instagrams and all of these things, that was a really great read. And it's a really great book in terms of the psychology of getting the best out of a given situation and getting the best out of yourself. It's not really a self-help book, but Brian has also suggested a variety of books for me as well. Margot says, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Petri. No one has done such an awesome looking copy as you did. Well, Petri, that is praise indeed. That is praise indeed. And Margot knows what she's talking about. She is doing a doctorate in the subject, and she is very well versed, and she's a great painter herself, and I have worked with her, and it's just lovely to have her on the stream today. And hopefully next Tuesday, Margot, if you can tune back in again, we'll have much more to show you. Mellow Puppy says, I'm so excited. I'm starting my own stained glass class in 3 months. Thank you for these shows. Mellow Puppy, you're very welcome. Thank you so much for your interest and your excitement. When we've been putting this live stream together with Petri, I've also been reaching out to fellow glass artists to get their reaction to the death of Sir Brian Clark. And I've got some fantastic names that I'm interviewing, that I haven't interviewed, and that are lined up to interview. And I'm going to put them together because basically I'll give you a backstory about Brian Clark and his legacy in terms of the projects that he's completed. But I think what is also as interesting, if not more interesting, is the effect and the impact he had on generations of creatives and the choices that generations of creatives made to get into stained glass based on Sir Brian Clark. He was creating books in his 20s that are still internationally important books, and they influenced generations of glass artists to take up stained glass, because he basically introduced a new way of thinking about glass and introduced a new way of using glass in the contemporary environment. And that was inspirational for artists who were going through the art school system to create studios after they left art school. I was one of those students, and I'm talking to other students who have been influenced here in the UK and stateside about, Brian Clark. So it'll take a little while to put all this together, but I want to do it justice. I don't want to just rush a tribute out to Brian Clark quickly. I want it to be considered, and I want it to be useful, and I want it to be as inspirational as I can from the perspective of being an artist and what Brian Clark brought to the table. You may have been fortunate enough to go and see his live show, A Great Light, at the Damien Hirst Gallery down in London in 2023. What a showcase for contemporary stained glass. And I do wonder if we'll ever see his likes again in the next few years. The capacity to put on a show like that and to sort of showcase stained glass at that scale with that level of finesse and that level of inventiveness and creativity. There are not many people who could create that show, and it is available on my YouTube channel. I did a day's discovery with John Rentians, the son of Patrick Rentians. We went round the show together. John was invited to the opening launch of the show, and his take on the work that he was seeing also as a fellow glass artist was really instructive. I love to hear from other glass artists how they respond to glass, because Brian Clark had a very particular way of designing, and it may not be your style. It wasn't my style, and it wasn't John Rentian's style, but we could certainly appreciate the spirit and the intention, even though the visual language, the vocabulary that he was using might be different to the vocabulary that we'll be using. Chat, please, I can see your feed here. If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. I'm not really set up to do demonstrations tonight because it was hopefully going to be Petri that was going to be on stream, but we can't really get Petri in. I don't know if Petri's still on the stream, if he wants to try. I'm just going to copy the link one more time to Petri and just send it to him to see if he can join us. But I think it's possibly not working. We've tried several times to get you on the stream. We've kind of shut the stream down and started it up 2 or 3 times, Petri. Then one more time, I've just sent you that link in to this live stream that I'm on just now. If you can see the live stream and you click on it, you might get in. I don't know. We have tried this 2 or 3 times already, but we haven't been able to get into the live stream. Got you, says Margot. Yes, Charlotte has got a link to Marge. For short. Yeah, follow Marge, follow Margot. She's in the States at the moment, as far as I know. Underwood says, I made a oh, Petri, my God, you can come in. Let's see if you're here. My God, you're here, Petri. Fantastic. You're with us. You're with us. Oh my God, what a palaver.
That was interesting.
That was interesting, wasn't it, man? Listen, let me just swap you over the other side. So, we can resume where we left off. Right. So, let me just bring up the media. I can't believe this, chat. We're in for a treat. Petri is here, and we can actually show you his head. So, let's just have a little look, first of all, at the live head. Let me just put that on live. It should be coming up in a second. Is it coming up? Yes. So this is the finished head. Petri, do you want to say something about it?
Yeah, I can't actually see it on screen yet.
Are you seeing it?
With me.
Okay, you're not seeing it on screen. Chat, can you see this image that's being shown? I don't know if you can or not. Let me know, chat, if you could see that. Brian says, wow, nice. I'm taking that you could see it. Let me just put that image back up again and see if we can get it on live.
I can see it now, yep.
Yeah, brilliant. So Petri, do you want to talk us through what we're looking at?
Well, that's the finished piece. So The first stage was to put on the iron acetates, and that's a pigment which I sort of developed myself. It's so simple. It's just dissolved wire wool, steel wool in vinegar, but it takes quite a while to dissolve. Over a period of time, it matures and it gets better and better. This bottle I use now is probably about 3 or 4 years old, so it's really working beautifully. The nice rich oranges now.
So, can you see I've got these stages now, so you can just take it away now, Petri, and talk about the stages of what we're looking at.
This photo here is the original that I was tasked with copying. So that was sent to me by Margot. If we can go to the next image, there we go. This is the iron acetates. So my first stage was to just trace on the iron acetates, just a vinegary mix with iron dissolved in it. And this is a picture before it was fired. So I'm just, the goal was to get these warm tones underneath the trace lines, which we saw on the original. So this was the before image. Then the next one will be hopefully the fired. There we go. That's what it looks like when it comes out of the kiln. So you get these nice, quite quiet orange hues. But when I trace it on the glass, you sort of flood it on, you puddle it on, so it's quite thick, and you just need to leave it to dry naturally. So it takes a while to dry. So it's imperative that you're working on a perfectly flat table, otherwise all of the liquid will run to one end while it's drying, and you'll get uneven results. So that's after it's been fired, first firing. That's fired at paint temperature around 680. This image I've traced on top of it. So this is after firing the iron acetate, and the trace I used was a mixture of Roche black and Bista brown, 50. So the hard lines are just with a nice regular trace, and the little washy grey lines I just water it down with from the water pot to get like half tones. So we get a combination of the iron acetate, orangey brown half tones, and the black brown Roche half tones combined.
So this is all being painted on a very pale green glass, yes?
Yes, it's almost a colourless glass. There's very little tint in it at all, if any, actually. I don't think there's any tint in this. But I put a bit, on this image, I've put some Jean Cousin on the back. So the reason the face looks a bit fleshy is there's Jean Cousin on the back. You can see a bit of contrast between the iron acetate on the front and the Jean Cousin on the back. Jean Cousin is a slightly redder brown, and the iron acetate is more of an orangey brown. And here I've used a water and gum matting mix to just do some further modelling on top on the next firing, and that was almost the last firing. I think I had one more firing when I just tried to boost a bit of the iron acetate just to bring out the oranges a bit more in places. There, that's the finished one.
Yeah, you can see much more of the fleshy tone there.
Yeah, it's quite
carry on.
Quite a distinctive paint style that Abraham was using. I've not really seen those sort of warm half tones done anywhere else, so it's quite a challenge to try and work out just how he was achieving those. And it's not exact, but I think it's a pretty close rendition of techniques which he was, not necessarily the techniques, but the finished results that he was able to achieve.
So just before we start answering more questions in chat, just describe the difference. You mentioned a Jean Cousin sanguine paint, which is different to your iron acetate. Describe for chat what that Jean Cousin paint is, please.
It comes as a powder, so you just mix it with water, preferably distilled water. I just tend to use tap water, but it's recommended to use distilled water. You've got a lot more control over the Jean Cousin than you do with my iron acetate, because the iron acetate is sort of flooded on. It works better in sort of discrete areas. But with the Jean Cousin, you can badger it and get a nice flat flesh tone. So they work a bit differently in application, and the results are a bit different, not just colour-wise, but they're different in as much as you're able to achieve a much flatter hue with a Jean Cousin. It's very pricey. It comes from
It's very what?
Very pricey. It's about £100 for a tiny little pot, but it does go a long way.
Yeah. I think to get your head around the concept, think about the Jean Cousin stain as like an enamel, like a transparent enamel that's usually painted on the back side. And that creates this lovely translucent flesh tone, but it's not an enamel. It is an iron. It's basically an iron compound, a little bit like our Bister browns and things like that. But it's a very much finer paint mixture, and it can be abraded back off again, can't it? Unlike a stain, which is once it's fired into the glass, you can't scratch it off. It's into the body of the glass. The Jean Cousin paint can be removed with acids or can be removed by abrading it, can't it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So we're getting questions here now from Charlotte. Charlotte says, can you show us the bottle, Petri, and how much wool per vinegar? So let's get down to the brass tacks. How do you make this stuff?
This is it. Give it a shake. You can see it's quite dense in colour. And it is literally just a case of stuffing as much wire wool, steel wool, into a bottle of vinegar as you can do, as it will take. So you have to empty probably about that much of the vinegar when you got a virgin bottle, and then just fill it up.
Show that again. Sorry, I was messing around. There we go. There's the bottle.
There's the bottle. I'll give it a shake so you can see the sort of colour it comes to. When you're making this, you really need to be careful, because as the steel wool dissolves, it gives off hydrogen gas. So you need to leave the lid loose so that the gas can escape. Otherwise, you might have a bomb on your hands and you get bomb squad holding your door and trying to work out what's happening where you live.
Hydrogen, that's what's coming off. Is it hydrogen?
Yeah, there's not enough to be flammable. There's not a danger of some sort of Hindenburg disaster, but there is enough to break the bottle if the pressure builds up. So you have to leave the lid off. Not off, but leave it loose so that gas can escape.
So Charlotte is saying, let's carry on.
It takes a while to dissolve. So you won't get this pigment, tomorrow. You'll start to get something usable maybe in a month, and leave it longer and it'll get even better. Like I say, it's several years now, this bottle, and it's really in its prime. You'll getting some lovely oranges now.
So Charlotte is saying, so many questions in my head. Does it react with anything? Is the iron acetate translucent?
Yeah, when it fires in, you can get a lovely orange colour coming through. It's fairly transparent. I've just got the piece here. I'll try and spin my iPad around if I can.
Yeah.
Can you see anything there?
We can see a bright light.
Yeah, no, it's not working.
Yeah, come over a bit. Pull it towards you a little bit more. Yeah, we'll have to play around with that.
You see anything there?
There. Yeah, pull it a little bit more towards you. There we are. Yes, we can now see it.
Yeah, I can see. There's a lot of light coming through the orange bit on the bottom left-hand corner. That's where where you can see the iron acetate without any other paint on top of it. So you get a feel for how it looks on its own there.
So Charlotte's saying white vinegar. Let's just get technical. Looking at that jar that you showed us, when you make your stain, are you filling that jar, stuffing it with steel wool until it's entirely full? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, literally as much wire wool as you can get in there as possible. Yeah, just stuff it all in there. I tend to use the finest grade of wire wool just because it's got a higher surface area, so it'll dissolve a little bit quicker. But you could probably get away with any sort of wire wool. The finer grade should dissolve.
So then you top it up with 5% acetic acid, which is just a white Sainsbury's tabletop vinegar, yeah?
I can't 100% remember because I think I sort of topped this up several times, and I may have put a bit of some slightly more concentrated acetic acid in there, because in my studio I've got regular supermarket vinegar, but I've also got something called glacial acetic acid, which is a concentrated acetic acid, so I might have just popped a bit of that in there as well. But you will get there with just regular Sainsbury's vinegar. But it might take a little bit longer.
Okay, that's fine. So we need a chemistry training, says Thunderwood Underwood. Jessica says, Petri, how thick does the paint film of Jean Cuisine achieve to get this intensity of color? How thick do you have to paint the Jean Cuisine or Cuisine, I don't know quite how to pronounce that, stain to get that color of sort of peachy brown? Is it on really thick or not?
No, you badger it quite thin. It really depends on what you're going for. You've got a lot more control with a Jean Cuisine than you do with my wire wool mix. And with a Jean Cuisine, you can badger it to any thickness you want. Just a bit like paint, really. Earlier on, Derek showed an image of a fox and a muntjac deer that I did.
Yeah, let's go back to that.
The fox and the deer is actually done with Jean Cuisine, but there I used it much thicker. So that's why you can see quite a deep hue, much deeper than a flesh tone. So you got it depends how thickly you. That's the one, yeah. You can apply it quite thick, and get a lot of depth of tone. And on the muntjac deer, you can see I've badgered it so it's darker on the top of his back and lighter on his belly. So you've got a lot more options in controlling and manipulating the density of paint. And then I've also used scrubs to highlight his ear and his chest, so you can remove it as well like you would a paint, which would be very hard to do with the iron paint mix.
I've used the Jean Cuisine's paint several times, and when I've put it on ultra thinly, really, really thinly, so it's just almost just like a suggestion, because it is quite a strong pigment, isn't it? And you can very easily over egg the pudding. You can very easily overpaint the Jean Cuisine stain, and it becomes this brilliant. It stops being a flesh tint and it starts becoming this orange peachy kind of color, and it can be. It's a very intense pigment, isn't it?
It is. A little bit goes a very long way. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
On this image you've got up at the moment with the Lynx family.
Yeah.
The two Lynx on the left-hand side, they've got tints of the iron acetate on their body, so you can see it's a more orange type of hue rather than the Jean Cuisine, which is like more of a brick red when it's in a thicker application.
And we have a chat message here from Nizar saying firing nano iron oxide gives slightly red brown colouring, and Nizar goes on to say a PhD colleague gave it for experimenting. So nano iron oxide, does that ring a bell?
Yeah, we are talking about nanoparticles anyway, and so the Jean Cuisine would be tiny particles of iron. There would be an iron. IRON, ION, iron. It's complicated, but it's an ionic compound, so it's a charged compound of iron. Yeah.
So Charlotte asks, how did you discover this recipe? Great question.
I was actually doing some wood staining. The carpenters use this as an ebonizing fluid. So on hardwoods, if you put it on hardwoods, it will make the wood go black. It reacts with the tannins in the wood. So I had some mixed up anyway to ebonize some wood, and I knew that you can fire iron into glass because that's what Jean Cuisine is. So I thought, well, let's give this a go on glass, and I've got a lovely colour coming out. So I was quite chuffed.
Fantastic, and you were just experimenting. I mean, I love the fact that you were kind of like just trying something out to see whether it would work, and you kind of came across this marvelous result, which is brilliant. I have a little bit of your iron acetate, and I have tried it. It's very watery, isn't it? It's unlike a stain that is quite gloopy. It's a very kind of liquidy material, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's very liquid. That's why it's a bit tricky to work with. You really do want to use it for little accents, discrete areas, rather than badgering or trying to fill a larger area. If you try and do a larger area, inevitably it'll dry thicker one end and almost disappear at the other end, because it will just take so long to dry. And trying to dry it quickly just exasperates it, makes it even worse. That flow just increases that flow, and you get more of a.
Did you say try and dry it quickly? Is that what you said? Try and dry it quickly, yeah?
No, so if you try and dry it quickly, it doesn't work for you. It just tends to spread even more, and you get an uneven result.
And do you have to keep agitating it and mixing it up? I imagine it separates, does it?
I tend to pour a little bit into the cap of the bottle and just use it straight out of the bottle. I'll give it a good shake before. And I mean, it doesn't take long to actually apply it, to put it onto the glass. It's a fairly swift process because it's not massively detailed. So you don't need to really agitate it once you've mixed the bottle, once you've shaken the bottle to start with. Then you can just go with it and it'll hold in suspension for the duration of you doing your whatever you need to do to apply it. If it takes about 5 minutes to put the iron acetate where you want it on the glass, you don't need to sort of re-agitate it in that 5 or 10 minutes. Should be fine.
Brilliant. Charlotte says, thank you, Petri. Love experimenting. Also, I'll try not to blow up the house. Yeah, this podcast or this live stream comes with a health warning. Don't blow up your studios with creating too much hydrogen, please. Keep the tip is to keep the lid loose so that the hydrogen escapes as it's fermenting, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. I did have someone comment from the States that they had a minor explosion in their studio, so yeah, do take care.
Please definitely take care of that. Yeah, you've got your health warning here, guys. Jessica says, could you mix your iron acetate with an ochre carrier like the ordinary stains to make it easier to handle? Great question, Jessica.
Yeah, I don't know. I've not tried that. What I have tried, I poured a bit out just into a little dish and let it dry and then scraped it up and made a powder out of it. And I was able to use that powder in a similar way to Jean Cousin, just mixing it with water and applying it and badgering it. It wasn't as clean an orange. It was slightly browner, but it was still a nice pigment. You can play with it. You can dry it out. It might not be quite as bright, quite as vivid, but you could probably do things with it.
And what's your firing temperature?
What's your firing
temperature as well?
680, my regular paint temperature I fire it at. And the same as Jean Cousin, that fires at your paint temperature. Every kiln's different, but whatever temperature you fire your vitreous glass paint at, that will be a good temperature to fire both the Jean Cousin and the iron acetate.
I think, I have used 680 in the past, and I find for my kiln, the gas kiln, it's a little bit too high. It does get close to the melting point of the glass, so the glass becomes quite soft and it takes on the bed if it's a whiting bed. So I've reduced the temperature down a little bit, but then fired it for longer in order to get that glossy effect. So it is worth experimenting, isn't it, with different temperature ranges? Because that, absolutely. Would you agree or not that temperature of 680 is quite close to the glass getting soft?
It is, yeah. It depends. It depends on your kiln. Every kiln's different. My temperature recording might not be particularly accurate. Yeah, kind of works in my kiln at that temperature. But I think the rule of thumb is whatever temperature you find that glass paint fires nicely in your kiln, that should work for the Jean Cousin and for the iron acetate. Just a little addition.
Yeah.
I have tried this on float glass, and I haven't got particularly good results. So it tends to work better on the softer mouth-blown glasses rather than the harder float glass.
And Kate asks, this is going to be one of the final questions, guys. Kate asks, so you don't need to add any gum arabic or anything else to your mixture?
No, there's no gum added, no. In the Jean Cousin as well, you don't want to be adding any gum to that. It's already got a binder when it comes from the factory, so both of these you don't need to add any extra gum.
Yeah, and a regular stain has got gamboge gum added as well, so that is during the manufacturing process that particular binder is used. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, have you experimented at all with your particular iron acetate with any kind of binder? Would it help or would it hinder the process?
I've not tried. Yeah, I really don't know. I don't actually have any of that gamboge, the brokers to try and mix it with. I've not really gone down that route. That's something to work. I'm a bit reluctant in doing any more because I've got so little of this now, and it's come to such a nice consistency that I don't want to try losing any of what I have. I want to sort of use what I have the way that I know to use it. So I'm a bit reluctant in trying to mix that in other potions. I'm a bit precious.
Actually, this has been wonderful. I'm so glad No, I get that. I get that entirely. I'm so glad you persevered and we managed to get this working, and it's just been brilliant to share time with you. And I hope I'm just getting another question here. It says, Brian says, I studied Renaissance style painting in college and I can't wait to learn to paint on glass, but the technique is drastically different. Did you study painting on canvas first? Asks Brian.
No, I was straight into glass. I don't actually have an art school background at all. After school, I went to university to study physics of all things, and I'm a failed physicist, so I just knocked on the door of a local stained glass studio and they took me on, and that's my routine. So I've got no technical expertise, no traditional art school background at all, I'm afraid.
Well, I mean, some of the best artists are self-taught. Some of the most amazing glass in the world is the result of people just having a love of the medium and just working through it and creating their own unique work, as you have done with many projects. So let me just very quickly give everybody your Instagram page. So if you want to click on Petri's Instagram page, there's a link here. If you just click on the paperclip, it will take you to Petri's Instagram feed. So give him a follow. Support what he does, because he is a fellow glass artist like you, like I, and he's got some more projects on board. Do you want to tell us a little bit about any upcoming projects, Petri, before we wrap up?
Well, the two that I'm working on at the moment are a pair of sundial windows for a school college in Hartford, and they've been quite challenging. Very different from the wildlife scenes you've seen this evening. Probably a bit more contemporary. And yeah, they got sundials in them, and so trying to calibrate the shadow on the glass has been a bit of a challenge, but they always like a challenge. Yeah, that's going well. They should be installing around August time, I think. So yeah, we're on course for those. And I just got a nice commission come through yesterday from for a church in Trinidad. So yeah, it's some nice projects in the pipeline.
Trinidad,
yeah.
My goodness, that is fantastic. Yeah, wonderful. Are you going to go out there to fit them?
No, I'll be shipping the glass across. I'm working with a studio out there, so they'll do all the site work their end, and it's a bit of a collaborative project. But yeah, looking forward to it. I worked with them in the past, so yeah, they're nice guys. Shout out to David Lawrence if he's watching.
Wonderful. Fabulous. Petri, thank you so much. We're going to wrap up the live feed tonight. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for all the chat and all the conversation. And you can always watch this live feed afterwards on video on demand on my channel. And you can have a look at the chat as it goes through. Thank you everybody for your patience. And next week, hopefully we'll be gremlin free. And, we'll have a seamless live stream next week. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. And we'll see you next Tuesday. Bye for now.